still strong at this weight, having been a four-weight world champion all the way from flyweight through the lightweight. It's a nightmare experience in Las Vegas for poor Ricky Hatton. Look at this. Just check this out. Oh, that is a shuddering punch which Hatton wouldn't have been a count of 2 minutes, and he's still down now.
Most violent sport.
Jack Dempsey, George Carpentier, Gene Tunney, Max Schmeling, Primo Carnera, Max Baer, Sonny Liston, Cassius Clay, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Mike Tyson,
Heavyweight champions of the world, holders of sport's richest prize, the true icons of the century of moving pictures, a mirror of their age, the kings of the ring. Summer 1919, Jess Willard, the heavyweight champion of the world, took a train to Toledo, Ohio. For a purse of $100,000, he was ready to defend his title against a new pretender to the throne, the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. Willard had held the title for 4 years. He entered the ring an overweight 245 pounds, 60 pounds heavier than Dempsey. In the first round, and for the first time in his 8-year career, Jess Willard was knocked to the canvas. He went down 6 more times in the first round alone under Dempsey's remorseless assault. Later, he alleged that Dempsey's bandages had been hardened with plaster of Paris. After taking a merciless beating for 3 rounds, Willard couldn't answer the bell for round 4. Jack Dempsey was the new heavyweight champion of the world. He was the latest in a list including John L. Sullivan, Gentleman Jim Corbett, Bob Fitzsimmons, James J. Jeffries, Tommy Burns, and Jack Johnson. Jack Dempsey destroyed Jess Willard on July the 4th, 1919, 1 year and 1 week after the end of the First World War.
At Vodafone, save up to £1,068 with the Samsung Galaxy S25 when you trade in an eligible phone. Hurry, offer ends the 11th of February. Go in-store or online today. Vodafone.
The Allies who had won the war were soon to become competitors inside the ring. The Frenchman Georges Carpentier arrived to take a tilt at Dempsey's crown. Carpentier had been decorated for bravery. Dempsey was said to have dodged the draft. It was a match made in heaven by the legendary promoter Tex Rickard. Carpentier, the darling of the ladies, was a mere middleweight, lighter than Dempsey and with a shorter reach. And he was blessed with the worst nickname in the history of heavyweight boxing. They called him the Orchid Man. Public opinion was against Dempsey. The majority of boxing fans and sports writers favoured Carpentier, hoping that the Frenchman's superior technique would overcome the champion's ferocity. On July the 2nd, 1921, over 90,000 spectators awaited the two fighters at the Jersey City Arena. It was the first $1 million gate in boxing history. Rickard and Jack Cairns, Dempsey's manager, wanted to give the crowd their money's worth. They had taken Dempsey aside and asked him to go easy on the little Frenchie. First-round knockouts are bad for business. For the first time in history, the media went transatlantic. 200,000 people crowded into the Place de la Concorde to hear a barely audible blow-by-blow commentary. Although Carpentier was the crowd's favourite, it was Dempsey who generated the excitement. Hunched up, head down, humming as he went, he battled forward relentlessly. Carpentier, a skillful boxer, hung on gamely. But by the end of the first round, it was looking grim for the Orchid Man. In the second round, Carpentier landed solidly, staggering Dempsey. For a brief moment, the tables were turned. But from that moment on, it was over for Carpentier. Dempsey, no longer willing to take any risks, destroyed the Frenchman with a blistering attack in the fourth round. After knocking out Carpentier and winning his next 2 championship fights, the world of showbiz beckoned Dempsey. Dempsey was courted by the giants of Hollywood, including the legendary director D.W. Griffith. He married the sultry actress Estelle Taylor, with whom he toured Europe. But while Dempsey was enjoying the high life, a new challenger emerged, Gene Tunney. A self-taught man, happy to rub shoulders with Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway, Tunney approached boxing like a science. A successful boxer should have 2 ends in view: to avoid punishment and to make money. Cool and calculating, he studied films of his opponents and planned his fights with meticulous care. He also knew the value of good PR. Dempsey, returning to the ring after a 3-year absence, had met his match. At the beginning of the fight, Tunney seemed intimidated by Dempsey's naked aggression. Later he said he felt Dempsey had wanted to kill him. But round after round, the young challenger gradually gained confidence. Tunney first out-jabbed and finally out-slugged Dempsey. Dempsey's sportsmanship, as he warmly congratulated his young opponent, moved America. Defeat had finally won him the nation's heart. Tunney was hailed in his hometown of New York, but elsewhere it was a different story. Tunney was considered a snob. His intellectual pretensions and his hobnobbing with great writers of the time, most notably George Bernard Shaw, didn't endear him to the public.
Using the same old bank card.
This is Rummy. At the conclusion of 1989, these were the top-rated heavyweights according to Ring Magazine. There are 10 names on the list, but for most boxing fans, only one name mattered. The one at the top. Mike Tyson was the baddest man on the planet. At just 23 years old, he was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, having successfully unified the titles of all three major sanctioning bodies. Tyson utilized an explosive style and devastating knockout power to capture the imagination of the boxing public. His dominance from the late 80s was expected to continue well into the 90s. The first heavyweight matchup of interest in the 90s was billed as the Preacher and the Puncher. He was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, having successfully unified the titles of all three major sanctioning bodies. Tyson utilized an explosive style and devastating knockout power to capture the imagination of the boxing public. His dominance from the late 80s was expected to continue well into the 90s. The first heavyweight matchup of interest in the 90s was billed as the Preacher and the Puncher, a bout that took place between former and devastating knockout power to capture the imagination of the boxing public. His dominance from the late 80s was expected to continue well into the 90s. The first heavyweight matchup of interest in the 90s was billed as the Preacher and the Puncher, a bout that took place between former world champion George Foreman and former world title challenger Jerry Cooney. Both fighters had been on the comeback trail, and neither was expected to make any serious noise. But when they squared off against each other, the boxing world took notice. Foreman stopped Cooney in the second round, dropping him once just before finishing him off with a powerful short left hook. It was a victory that brought a lot of positive attention to Big George's comeback efforts.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and exclusive access to all things video.
When undisputed heavyweight champion Mike Tyson defended his titles against Buster Douglas, it was expected to be nothing more than a mere formality in the lead-up to a highly anticipated showdown between Tyson and Evander Holyfield. But instead of the early knockout for Tyson that most were expecting, we got what was to this day arguably the biggest upset in the history of professional sports.
A perfect storm scenario involving the death of Buster Douglas's mother and an overconfident Mike Tyson paved the way for the odds-defying performance from Douglas, who stopped Tyson in the 10th round. The image of Tyson reaching for his mouthpiece as he was being counted out remains one of the most surreal moments in sports ever captured on film. Buster Douglas had just become the new, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. 4 months after losing to Douglas, Mike Tyson made his return to the ring when he faced Henry Tillman in a match billed as The Road Back. This card also featured Big George Foreman on the undercard. Foreman stopped Jose Adelson Rodriguez in the second round of their fight to continue his winning streak on the comeback trail, and in the main event, Tyson made quick work of Tillman. He stopped him towards the end of the first round with a big right hand, and Tyson showed the boxing world he still had the ferocious power to be a force in the heavyweight division. A lot of people still viewed Tyson as the best heavyweight in the world, believing that he simply had an off night against Douglas. When undisputed heavyweight champion Buster Douglas took on challenger Evander Real Deal Holyfield, it was immediately obvious that Douglas wasn't as physically fit or mentally prepared as he'd been 9 months earlier when he shocked the world against Mike Tyson. Holyfield, on the other hand, appeared to be extremely well prepared physically, and he quickly proved that he was also extremely well prepared mentally. Holyfield stopped Douglas in round 3 with a beautifully timed counter right hand. Evander Holyfield had just become the new, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He made boxing history by becoming the first boxer to ever unify all the major titles in both the cruiserweight and heavyweight divisions. Rocky V was released in theaters on November 16, 1990. It was by far the worst film in the Rocky franchise. The character of Tommy Gunn was portrayed by real-life up-and-coming prospect Tommy Morrison, who received widespread attention in the boxing community for his role in the film. The last notable fight of 1990 was the contest between Iron Mike Tyson and Alex Stewart. It was billed as the hard way back, but it wound up being an easy night's work for Iron Mike. Tyson dropped Stewart 3 times in the first round, prompting a halt to the bout with the 3 knockdown rule in effect. With the victory, Tyson had secured back-to-back first-round knockouts following his stunning loss at the hands of Buster Douglas. At the conclusion of 1990, these were the top-rated heavyweights according to Ring magazine. Evander Holyfield was the reigning, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, but many observers still believed that Mike Tyson was the best in the division.
Valley would have been envious of this giant megaphone. The youngest referee in boxing history, 19-year-old Georges Carpentier, calls the fighters together for their instructions. The 5th round of a surprisingly close fight. Moran gets home with 2 good punches. The undaunted Johnson steps back and gives him a hearty round of applause. By the 12th round, it is obvious that Johnson was having trouble against the young challenger. Franco stumbling through the ropes in his eagerness to get at the tiring champion. Jack Johnson has constantly had to call on all his defensive skills to offset the aggressiveness of Moran. 20th round. Johnson holds a slight lead on the scorecard of the only official, 19-year-old Georges Carpentier. The fight ends and Carpentier declares Johnson the winner and still heavyweight champion of the world. Back in the U.S., the quest for a white hope is built to a fever pitch. This skinny-legged 19-year-old Tanktown brawler named Kid Blackie was not even considered. But later, as Jack Dempsey, he would completely outshine all the momentary sensations of these turbulent times. The man eventually to get the call was a more impressive figure, Jess Willard, a 6'6" giant from Potawatomi County, Kansas. Willard had been a circus strongman until he was 30 years old. Then flamboyant fight manager Tom Jones, seen here with Jess, nicknamed him the Potawatomi Giant and persuaded him to enter the fight game. Jess started training with but one thought in mind, a championship bout. Willard was not a clever boxer, but his immense strength and fantastic endurance made him a formidable opponent in those days when a fight could go as long as 45 3-minute rounds. 1915, a chubby Jack Johnson had run out of his money and his welcome in the war clouds that were inundating Europe. He agreed to fight Willard in Havana, Cuba. Here are Johnson and Willard being introduced in Havana 1 week before the fight. Johnson appears a dapper world traveler compared to farm boy Willard in his Sunday best suit. And his welcome in the war clouds that were inundating Europe. He agreed to fight Willard in Havana, Cuba. Here are Johnson and Willard being introduced in Havana 1 week before the fight. Johnson appears at Havana, Cuba. Here are Johnson and Willard being introduced in Havana 1 week before the fight. Johnson appears a dapper world traveler compared to farm boy Willard in his Sunday best suit. Johnson appears a dapper world traveler compared to farm boy Willard in his Sunday best suit. The timekeeper for the upcoming fight takes a bow. It's none other than Bat Masterson, the fabled Western gunfighter and marshal. As you can see, he must have used a toupee for his TV appearances. The morning of April 5th, Johnson, as usual, enters the ring first. At this time, Jack Johnson had not set foot in the United States in 3 years. Jess appears a fearsome figure dressed all in black. This is the man that an estimated 40 million Americans will be rooting for while getting telegraphed round-by-round accounts of the forthcoming battle. In 1915, the fighters were required to weigh in just before the fight. The scales confirmed the expected 60-pound difference between champion and challenger. Another old-time custom, putting the gloves on in the ring. On Johnson's right is Sam McVeigh, another all-time great Negro heavyweight. Another old-time custom, putting the gloves on in the ring. On Johnson's right is Sam McVeigh, another all-time great Negro heavyweight. Another old-time custom, putting the gloves on in the ring. On Johnson's right is Sam McVeigh, another all-time great Negro heavyweight. The two men shake hands for the cameras, and one of the most controversial encounters in boxing history is about to begin. This is another old-time custom, putting the gloves on in the ring. On Johnson's right is Sam McVeigh, another all-time great Negro heavyweight. The two men shake hands for the cameras, and one of the most controversial encounters in boxing history is about to begin. This is a still photograph of the scene at Havana Racetrack as it appeared during the fight. Not until 1967 was the complete version of the actual fight films discovered. As you watch, see if you believe that one of these two men threw the fight. The first round. The fight starts calmly, both men aware that they may have to go 45 rounds in the sweltering tropical sun. Temperature at ringside, 103 degrees and rising. As you watch, see if you believe that one of these two men threw the fight. The first round. The fight starts calmly, both men aware that they may have to go 45 rounds in the sweltering tropical sun. Temperature at ringside, 103 degrees and rising. The bout was originally to be held in Mexico City, with Pancho Villa providing the money. Adverse developments in the Mexican Revolution forced the fight to be moved here to Cuba. Now see the fighters photographed by a special close-up camera. This is the first time film was taken from first row ringside. You can see a corner water bucket and a spectator's head in the foreground. Round 10 from a camera facing the grandstand. Corner water bucket and a spectator's head in the foreground. Round 10 from a camera facing the grandstand. Johnson is showing the skeptics that he's still the best boxer in the world, scoring in flurries to gain a commanding point lead. But this fight is becoming an endurance contest, with conditioning the decisive factor. Johnson, in his 7th year as champion, second only to Sullivan in longevity, does not have time on his side. The 26th round. Already this is the longest fight ever held in the heavyweight division under Marquis of Queensberry rules. Willard is watching closely, realizing that his chance to reverse the momentum of the fight may come shortly. Marquis of Queensberry rules. Willard is watching closely, realizing that his chance to reverse the momentum of the fight may come shortly. Suddenly, Jess lashes out with a ponderous right. Johnson goes down. Suddenly, Jess lashes out with a ponderous right. Johnson goes down. Referee Jack Welch counts, but the champion doesn't move. 8, 9, 10. Jess Willard is the new heavyweight champion of the world, scoring a convincing 26. Referee Jack Welch counts, but the champion doesn't move. 8, 9, 10. Jess Willard is the new heavyweight champion of the world, scoring a... Referee Jack Welch counts, but the champion doesn't move. 8, 9, 10. Jess Willard is the new heavyweight champion of the world, scoring a convincing 26th round knockout. The partisan crowd goes wild. They surround Willard. Referee Jack Welch counts, but the champion doesn't move. 8, 9, 10. Jess Willard is the new heavyweight champion of the world, scoring a convincing 26th round knockout. The partisan crowd goes wild. They surround Willard. Now in slow motion, let's rerun this never-before-seen film of the actual knockout punch. Willard feints, then gets in with that explosive right. Johnson, crumpling, tries to pull Jess with him. Willard catches himself on the ropes and steps back. At first, the champion's legs are bent, but then they slip down as the champion passes out cold. Not even a muscle twitches as referee Welch completes the full count. Because of federal laws, no films of this fight were shown in the United States. Only this still photograph was seen by the American public. And ego-stung Johnson, despondent at losing the title he had held for 7 years,
on the ropes and steps back.
At first, the champion's legs are bent, but then they slip down as the champion passes out cold. Not even a muscle twitches as referee Welch completes the full count. Because of federal laws, no films of this fight were shown in the United States. Only this still photograph was seen by the American public. And ego-stung Johnson, despondent at losing the title he had held for 7 years, used this photo to justify the claim that he had thrown the fight to Jess Willard. Jack said he was shading his eyes as he lay facing the bright Cuban sun. In 1920, Jack Johnson ended his lengthy exile. He was shading his eyes as he lay facing the bright Cuban sun. In
7 years, used this photo to justify the claim that he had thrown the fight to Jess Willard. Jack said he was shading his eyes as he lay facing the bright Cuban sun. In 1920, Jack Johnson ended his lengthy exile and at long last returned to the United States. Here he gives himself up to federal deputy Billy Mitchell at the Mexican border 8 years after he had jumped bail. Following what proved to be an embarrassingly triumphal cross-country railroad trip, Johnson was placed in Leavenworth Penitentiary for 1 year. While there, he held press conferences, gave exhibitions, and posed with his proud jailer. That's the warden in the white shirt. When released, Jack Johnson happily resumed his vaudeville career. He leads a jazz band in a style Duke Ellington could never emulate. Band in a style Duke Ellington could never emulate. In 1946, near the end of his life, Johnson plays the role of an Ethiopian general in a production of the opera Aida. Back in 1916, Willard began his heavyweight championship reign under the onus of Jack Johnson's false claim that Jess had won a rigged fight. Willard's